The Godfather, 1972. 20 weird facts you didn't know. When people think of cinematic masterpieces, The Godfather instantly comes to mind. This 1972 crime epic didn't just win 3 Academy Awards, it reshaped Hollywood forever. But while millions have watched Vito steady the family as Michael transforms, very few know about the absolutely bizarre events that happened behind the cameras. From a stray cat that wandered onto set to one actor who didn't know what she was auditioning for, the production was filled with moments stranger than fiction. If you remember seeing those sepia-toned posters in '72, this one's for us. What if I told you that one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history happened because of a stray cat that wandered onto set? Can you guess which legendary actor never actually learned his lines for the entire film? Number 20. Uninvited Cat. That famous opening scene where Vito Corleone sits in his office, gently stroking a cat while listening to requests on his daughter's wedding day? Pure accident. Francis Ford Coppola was walking through the Paramount Studios lot when he spotted a stray cat just wandering around. On a whim, he picked it up and told Marlon Brando to improvise with it during filming. The cat was so content sitting in Brando's lap that it stayed there for the entire day of shooting. But here's the kicker. The cat's purring was so loud that it actually drowned out some of Brando's dialogue, forcing the sound engineers to re-record his lines later. What started as a random encounter with a homeless cat became one of the most memorable images in film history. But this wasn't the only time Brando would surprise everyone with his unconventional methods. Number 19. Bulldog Jowls. When Marlon Brando auditioned for the role of Don Corleone, studio executives at Paramount were absolutely against casting him. They considered him box office poison after a string of flops and thought he was too much of a risk. But Brando was determined to land the part, so he stuffed cotton balls into his cheeks to create those distinctive bulldog jowls that would define the character. He slicked back his hair with olive oil and transformed himself so completely that when Coppola secretly showed the audition footage to studio executives, they didn't even recognize him. The transformation was so convincing that one executive reportedly asked, "Who is this guy? He's perfect." For the actual filming, a dentist created a special mouthpiece that gave Brando the same effect without the cotton. That dental appliance is now on display in the Museum of the Moving Image in New York. What's even more incredible is that this same man would go on to use an acting technique that would make veteran actors question everything they knew about their craft. Number 18. Real horse head. Most people assume that horrifying horse head in movie producer Jack Woltz's bed was a masterpiece of special effects. They're wrong. Coppola insisted on using a real horse's head, an era-typical, practical effect that would be unthinkable today. The prop was reportedly sourced from a rendering plant and kept on ice. Accounts say John Marley didn't know it was real until cameras rolled. His recoil and scream are widely described as genuine. Coppola has said the scene worked because the audience can sense authenticity. If that prop shocked you, wait till you feel what Sonny wore under his suit. Number 17. $35,000. Pacino. For his legendary performance as Michael Corleone, Al Pacino earned just $35,000 for the entire film. To put that in perspective, that's roughly $250,000 in today's dollars. Remarkably modest for a role that redefined the crime epic. James Caan and Diane Keaton also received the same insulting $35,000, while Robert Duvall got a whopping $36,000, $1,000 more. Meanwhile, Brando took a low upfront fee with profit participation, variously reported to net him around 7 figures as the film exploded. The salary disparity was so extreme that Pacino later joked he couldn't even afford to see the movie when it came out. 2 years later, Part 2 paid $600,000 plus 10% of the film's profits. After the massive success of the first film, Pacino had finally gained the negotiating power to demand what he was worth. And 2 years later, leverage would rewrite that paycheck completely. Number 16. Orange Omen. Throughout The Godfather, oranges appear before every major death. Vito buying oranges before he's shot. Oranges on Jack Woltz's table before the horse head scene, oranges scattered around Sonny's death scene. Fans have spent decades analyzing this symbolism, writing academic papers about it. But this wasn't originally planned as a symbol of impending doom. Chosen first for visual contrast, then embraced by Coppola as a recurring omen once the pattern emerged during editing. Production designer Dean Tavoularis simply chose oranges because they provided a striking visual contrast against the film's dark, muted color palette that made scenes pop on screen. What started as a practical design choice to brighten up dark scenes, accidentally, became one of cinema's most discussed symbols. Sometimes the best art happens by pure chance. A color pop became an omen, just like a certain uninvited pet in the opener. Number 15. Cue cards. Here's something that would shock most actors. Marlon Brando didn't memorize a single line for The Godfather. Instead, he had cue cards strategically placed all around the set, taped to other actors, to props, and even to the camera lens. Brando believed reading in the moment kept reactions spontaneous, rather than stiff or over-rehearsed. Some actors were initially frustrated, thinking Brando was being lazy or disrespectful. But Coppola not only allowed this unusual method, but encouraged it, knowing that Brando's natural reactions would feel more authentic than memorized speeches. This technique gave Brando's performance that effortless, lived-in quality that made Don Corleone feel like a real person rather than a character. Can you imagine winning an Academy Award without memorizing a single line? Spontaneity for Brando, surgical precision for Caan. Up next. Number 14. 100 squibs. The bloody toll booth assassination of Sonny Corleone required James Caan to wear over 100 tiny explosive charges, called squibs, attached to his clothing, each one packed with fake blood and small explosive devices. Each squib was designed to simulate a bullet hit, and had to be precisely timed with the gunshot sound effects down to precise cues. Caan described the sensation as being punched violently all over his body repeatedly, while blood packets exploded against his skin. The scene took 3 full days to film, because every single explosive had to be perfectly synchronized. The cameras had to capture multiple angles simultaneously, and if even one squib misfired, they had to reset everything and start over from the beginning. Between takes, Caan looked like he'd been in an actual gunfight, covered head to toe in fake blood, and exhausted from the physical punishment. He joked that if he had accidentally covered any of the squibs with his hands during filming, it would have blown a hole right through him. The dedication was worth it. That scene remains one of the most shocking death sequences ever filmed. Brutal to film, and the studio pressure on Coppola was worse. Number 13. Cannoli. Improvised. Leave the gun, take the cannoli, spoken by Clemenza after a mob hit, wasn't in the original script, and has become one of the most quoted lines in movie history. The line was improvised by actor Richard Castellano after Coppola added an earlier scene where Clemenza's wife reminds him to pick up cannoli for dessert. Castellano, thinking like his character, connected the two scenes on his own and created this perfect moment that captured the casual, everyday nature of violence in the Corleone world, where murder and grocery shopping could happen in the same breath. What makes it even more brilliant is that it shows how these men compartmentalize their lives. One moment they're executing someone, the next they're worried about disappointing their wives by forgetting dessert. The line wasn't just funny, it was psychologically revealing. Number 12. De Niro Detour. Before James Caan was cast as the hot-headed Sonny Corleone, Robert De Niro auditioned for the role with an interpretation that was completely different from what we know today. His audition was dark, intense, and volcanic, showing a Sonny who was more calculating and dangerous rather than impulsively violent. The audition footage, which Coppola released years later, shows a young De Niro with an explosive energy that's absolutely mesmerizing to watch. However, producer Robert Evans was already set on Caan for Sonny, and Coppola was determined to have Pacino play Michael, creating a political situation that left De Niro on the outside. He was offered the smaller role of Paulie Gatto, but had to turn it down due to scheduling conflicts with another film. Ironically, this rejection led to De Niro being cast as young Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2, a role that won him an Academy Award and made cinema history as the first time two actors won Oscars for playing the same character. He missed Sonny, but destiny had a different Corleone waiting. Number 11. Mobsters Visit. Crew accounts say real, organized crime figures occasionally appeared on set. In one oft-repeated story, two visitors met Brando and reportedly told him, "You're doing a good job," before leaving. Rather than being intimidated, Brando was fascinated by these encounters, and later described how surreal it was to be complimented on his portrayal of a fictional crime boss by people who may have actually committed similar crimes. These visits created an atmosphere of genuine tension among the crew, but they also served as unofficial quality control checks to ensure the film was representing that world authentically. Approval from the experts. Now meet the least prepared person on set. Number 10. Kay's audition. When Diane Keaton auditioned for the role of Kay Adams, she admitted she hadn't read the script and had absolutely no idea what the movie was about, or even what genre it was. She was just starting her career, and was so desperate for any acting job that she would have auditioned for a toothpaste commercial. The only thing she knew was that she would be working with Al Pacino, whom she greatly admired from his stage work. Her natural, unaffected audition won her the part, but she remained somewhat confused about the plot throughout much of the filming process, often asking other actors to explain scenes to her. This genuine naivety actually helped her performance tremendously, as Kay was supposed to be an outsider slowly discovering the dark truth about the Corleone family. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. Number 9. Wedding Chaos. The opening wedding sequence required over 350 extras and took 4 full days to shoot, making it one of the most complex scenes ever filmed at that time. To add authenticity, Coppola encouraged the background actors to improvise freely and stay in character throughout the filming, creating genuine conversations and interactions. He then shot specific vignettes within the larger celebration, weaving together dozens of mini-stories happening simultaneously. Many of the wedding guests were actually members of Coppola's own family and friends from the Italian-American community, who brought their own family photos and personal stories to make the celebration feel real. The scene was so elaborate that catering for the extras rivaled the budgets of some small productions of the era, and extras reportedly celebrated like a real wedding, adding to the lived-in feel. The result was magical, a wedding that felt lived-in and authentic. Number 8. Luca's nerves. The actor who played the intimidating Luca Brasi wasn't really acting at all. Lenny Montana was a former professional wrestler who had actually worked as an enforcer for the Colombo crime family before becoming an actor. This wasn't just method acting. Montana had genuinely broken legs and collected debts for one of New York's most dangerous crime families. When he had to deliver lines to Marlon Brando, Montana was so nervous about performing opposite such a legendary actor that he couldn't get through a single good take in an entire day of filming. His hands were literally shaking, and he stumbled over every word. Rather than reshoot, Coppola brilliantly added a scene of Luca Brasi nervously rehearsing his lines before meeting the Godfather, which explained Montana's genuine nervousness and made it part of the character. Number 7. Coppola on edge. Francis Ford. Coppola was nearly fired multiple times during production, with studio executives literally having replacement directors waiting in the wings, ready to take over at a moment's notice. They thought his pacing was too slow, his artistic vision too pretentious, and worried constantly about budget overruns that could bankrupt the studio. The situation became so tense that Paramount executives would show up on set daily, whispering among themselves and making Coppola paranoid about every decision. Marlon Brando, sensing the danger to his director, made an unprecedented threat. He would walk off the film immediately if Coppola was fired, which would have killed the entire production. The turning point came when Coppola filmed the restaurant assassination scene where Michael kills Sollozzo and McCluskey. When executives saw this intense, perfectly crafted sequence that had audiences jumping out of their seats, they finally understood Coppola's vision and backed off their firing threats. Number 6, $6.2 million budget. Despite becoming one of the highest grossing films of all time, The Godfather was made for just $6.2 million. Incredibly modest, even by 1972 standards. To put this in perspective, that's a fraction of what a modern wide release might spend just on marketing. Paramount Studios monitored every expense so closely that they had accountants scrutinizing expenses line by line. Coppola was forced to become extremely resourceful. Costumes for extras were rented second-hand from canceled productions, props were borrowed from other studio movies, and the same background actors were used multiple times, with different wardrobe changes to make crowds appear larger. Even the elaborate food seen in banquet scenes was recycled and served to the crew after filming wrapped. Nothing could be wasted. Number 5. Modern number. Studio executives originally wanted The Godfather set in contemporary 1970s Kansas City to save money on period costumes and sets. Picture this. They envisioned a modern gangster film with bell-bottom pants, disco-era styling, and wood-paneled station wagons instead of classic 1940s cars. Coppola fought this decision so fiercely that he nearly got fired over it, arguing passionately that the story's emotional core required the post-World War II time period, when Italian-American families were still deeply traditional. His insistence on period authenticity nearly cost him his job multiple times, with executives constantly complaining about the additional costs of vintage cars, period-appropriate costumes, and elaborate New York locations. The studio wanted a cheap, quick gangster flick, but Coppola was determined to create an epic family saga. Thankfully, his vision won out, but the battles weren't over yet. Number 4. Word ban. The script completely avoided the words mafia and Cosa Nostra. To ease pressure from Italian-American advocacy groups during production, producers agreed the script would drop those terms entirely. This wasn't just political correctness, it was survival, as Joe Colombo's Italian-American Civil Rights League had enough power to shut down production entirely. The closest the film gets to using mafia is a newspaper headline reading, "Mobster Barzini questioned in underworld feud," after Michael's restaurant killings. Writers had to get creative, using terms like the family business, this thing of ours, and simply the family instead. The word ban forced the screenplay to be more subtle and sophisticated, ironically making the dialogue more authentic to how real organized crime figures actually spoke. Number 3. Score disqualified. Composer Nino Rota was initially nominated for an Academy Award for his beautiful score, including the iconic love theme that still gives people chills today. However, in a devastating turn of events, he was disqualified when Oscar officials discovered that parts of the music had been used in his earlier 1958 Italian film Fortunella. Rota hadn't plagiarized. He had recycled his own work, slowing it down and rearranging it into the melancholic melody we know today. The disqualification was controversial because the transformed music sounded completely different from the original, but the Academy's rules were strict about reused compositions. Music critics argued that the reworked theme was so different it should be considered a new composition entirely. The beautiful music that defined The Godfather's emotional landscape almost never got the recognition it deserved. Music stumbled. The ending, meanwhile, became myth in a single shot. Number 2. Door shot change. The original ending had Kay Adams simply walking away after the office door closed in her face, leaving her emotional state completely ambiguous and audiences unsure of how to feel. But Coppola wasn't satisfied with this conclusion. He felt it was too weak and didn't properly complete Kay's character ARC. In a last-minute decision that would change cinema history, he decided to hold the camera on Kay's face longer, showing her watching through the doorway as Michael receives the loyalty of his capos. Holding on Kay's face reframed the ending from ambiguous to devastating. Audiences witness her realization as the door closes. Instead of Kay just leaving, audiences now saw her witness Michael's complete transformation into a ruthless Don. and the camera captured her expression of stunned betrayal as she realized the man she married was gone forever. This final shot of Kay's heartbreak became one of the most powerful endings in cinema history. Number 1. Oscar refusal. When Marlon Brando won the Academy Award for Best Actor on March 27, 1973, he didn't show up to accept it, creating one of the most controversial moments in Oscar history. Instead, he sent 26-year-old Apache activist Sachin Littlefeather in his place, dressed in traditional Native American clothing. She walked onto the stage in front of millions of viewers worldwide and politely but firmly declined the Oscar on Brando's behalf, citing Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans and the ongoing Wounded Knee occupation. The audience reaction mixed boos and applause, and contemporaneous reports claimed John Wayne had to be restrained backstage. Littlefeather later said the speech harmed her career. In 2022, the Academy issued a formal apology for the treatment she received. The moment became one of the most discussed Oscar appearances in history, linking The Godfather to a broader conversation about representation. This single moment of protest overshadowed everything else about that night and proved that even the most celebrated films can become vehicles for social change. Which of these incredible behind-the-scenes stories surprised you the most? From stray cats to improvised lines to real mobsters giving their stamp of approval, this masterpiece was shaped by moments that no screenwriter could have planned. The chaos, the compromises, and the pure accidents all combined to create something that transcended everyone's expectations. Comment the one fact you'd never heard before and the craft choice you think made it immortal. And if you enjoyed discovering these secrets, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories from Hollywood's greatest films.